A little bit of a good Lord. I'm filling out uh, a ticket with Substack because I'm so frustrated right now. Y'all, I need some time at the Korean spa. I need to go to the bathhouse. This is so stressful. My phone. Anyway, y'all don't care. We're here to talk about K-pop Demon Hunters. How are
That's
you,
right.
Ed? I've just had a frustrating 10, 15 minutes, y'all. So enough said about that dumbness.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
are you doing?
I'm well above average, especially because I have the sleepy cuddly
Yay!
puppy behind me there. So Scout is
Yay, Scout.
joining in the
That's awesome.
festivities. So
I'm going to see if I can raise this up a little bit. Welcome to those of you who are here, and thank you for your patience. That's a little better, although my face is huge. See if I can move away a little bit more.
but
Anyway, we're here to talk about this movie.
are
And I wanted us to talk about how it came to us. But first, I wanted to say that I was telling my kids, who I think a couple of them have seen it, a couple of them haven't. I said, we're talking about this movie, and I said the name of the movie, and they both started laughing. And it's something about the way I said it. I think I said it in a very Gen X like parent. I was like, K-pop Demon Hunters, and they're like, you sound so lame when you put it that way. I'm like, well, I'm 53 years old. What can I say? I'm not cool. Anyway, so
well, you're cool
you
enough to
want to,
watch
yeah.
this.
Well, I guess, right? Mega,
Yeah,
mega, mega movie.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Do you want to share with our audience how this movie came to our attention?
Um, so that's a fabulous looking smoothie or something. I'm not sure what that was, but
Sorry, it's a protein smoothie.
got it. Okay. So first of all, I actually heard about it because my wife Amy and our son Zach watched it when he was home for fall break.
Got
And they
it.
asked me if I wanted to watch, and I was like, whatever. No. Sounds I think there was a Colorado Avalanche hockey game that I could watch on my iPad, and I was like, I'm gonna watch hockey.
Fair.
And so they both were like, this was amazing. You totally need to watch it. Okay, okay, okay. So then week and a half-ish ago, something like that, both of MaryAnn and I were at the Next conference in Grand Rapids, and one of the opening speakers like focused a lot of her sharing on this. And we, because this is how we both function, we're texting a bit back and forth during this
Right.
saying, hey,
Right.
next pop culture pastors hour. even as the presenter had been talking about how we need to kind of move off the treadmill of productivity and creating and putting things out, and we're both
That's
like,
right.
hey, we got to put more content out.
That's right.
So
Always be producing.
that's
Yep.
right.
All right. I'm still working on getting this set up. I'm using my iPad, which is why I look gigantic, like the big Wizard of Oz head next to Ed, a normally sized person.
Actually, I have a fairly large head, but so
But you're in proportion. Like I'm just
that's
like
true.
all
That's
head.
true.
Anyway. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we're watching this and we're across. I mean, you're sitting somewhere else, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. Or maybe you suggested it. I don't know. The other thing I will just say by way of intro, this was so sweet. So I'll just be cagey on the details, but recently I was volunteering to be with a family who is going through some difficult immigration stuff, and they had a very important, stressful appointment that I was with them for. I wasn't the only one. There was two other volunteers there, one of whom spoke Spanish. The other two of us, I speak like 3-year-old Spanish, like I can communicate with toddlers pretty well. Let's go over your colors. Anyway, so we're kind of just waiting in line for this appointment, and we're talking and as best we can. And the other volunteer, the other one who didn't speak much Spanish, mentioned his thanks, Mom. Um, you are so beautiful, no matter how big your head. So we're talking to this family. It's a couple and a young child, maybe 5 years old. And the grandpa said, I was with my grandkids recently and we watched K-pop Demon Hunters. And like the little kid just went like this and the mom too, like, went like this, and it was like this moment of connection with a cross language barrier, and the mom was like, "K-pop." And it was very sweet. So, we are super late jumping on this bandwagon because it's been out quite a while, long enough for people to do their Halloween costumes and all that kind of stuff, um, but we wanted to watch
But
it and
we're
give
Gen
it some
X old
thought.
people, so we have to.
That's
It
right.
takes us a while to catch up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. We're on our own timeline, and we don't care what's cool. We just do the things that we do.
that's right. That's right.
So, any other kind of introductory kind of just about the zeitgeist around the movie or anything before we just kind of dive
Not
in?
really. I'd say
All
dive in.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, we thought we would just kind of bounce back and forth. So I don't know. Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
So
What's your
I
pleasure?
guess I'll jump in, which with kind of a bit of a general kind of
Yeah.
thing as opposed to a very specific thing in the film. So I I was so surprised at the um the deeper messages of the film.
Hmm.
Um, the name doesn't imply anything of deeper messages in this.
Yeah.
Um, and I've been in the church I'm serving now. I've been sharing a lot recently about how continues to surprise us. That
Hmm.
God continues to do a new thing, and how do we let ourselves be open to those surprises that happen? And I think of like the parables of Jesus, that he was using these stories in a way that would surprise the people who were listening.
Mm.
And so it was telling a story about a dysfunctional family unit,
Yeah.
and then having this deeper thing that maybe by the end of it, people are like, wait, what? You went there
Mm.
with that?
Mm.
No, so I kind of felt a little bit like that with this, that it brought these powerful messages in kind of through the side door. That if you started just watching this, just like K-pop Demon Hunters, cool. Um,
You
that
say
it
it better than I do, by the way.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
it's because I'm
Yeah.
52. I'm that much younger.
Yeah,
So
that's right. You're not over
yeah,
the hill yet.
that's right, that's right.
Just
So
cresting.
that's
Yeah.
yeah. So that's just kind of my initial. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. And I was telling an elder in our church that had seen it, and then maybe I can't remember if I said we were going to, yeah, there was so much in it. We were going to talk about it, you and I, and she's like, "Really?" Because I just kind of saw it and thought it was a fun movie, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, there's so much. And I'll say by way of kind of my general overview is, and I think I wrote this somewhere or said this somewhere, when the Barbie movie came out, the villain of that movie was the patriarchy, which is kind of amazing that a blockbuster would have a villain of the patriarch. And the villain here is shame, like just shame, that Gima is the manifestation of that. But my kind of overarching thing is I was watching it and I just rewatched it this morning, kind of the high points. It's so consonant with Brene Brown's work around shame and wholeheartedness that I was like, I would not be surprised if she was a consultant on the film. I mean, there's so much, and I'll get into some of that with my thoughts as we go along. But how shame functions, what it does to us, what the antidote to it is. I just was like, this is really profound. If you want to understand her work and where she started, it's all in this movie.
Hmm.
So, and
I
maybe
want
that's
to.
a good, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm hoping, like, in one of her podcasts coming up, she talks about this. I mean, that would be
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
I have
should have
not,
invited her to
yeah.
this.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen her reference it, although I'm not um tuned into her podcast by a matter of kind of habit. So maybe she's talked about it, but I haven't seen on any of her newsletters or anything.
Hmm.
But why don't we start there? Because I think you and I were both struck and made some notes about this kind of idea of shame and how it connects to original sin or our, um, which is a theological concept that actually is not really in scripture. It's inspired by, kind of came after, people kind of put meaning on that original Adam and Eve story of calling it original sin. But a lot of people more recently have sort of flipped that on its head to say, what's going on in that story is we are created in God's image. We believe that, we live it out, and we forget. Like we get separated from that. It's not the kind of Calvinist idea of like we're just fundamentally broken now. It's there still is that sense of connection with God that is the way we were originally meant to be and are still are. Um, and it just is remembering that and staying in touch with that. So, curious kind of where you saw those kinds of things, or any thoughts about, definitely with my pastor's hat on, I was thinking about sort of sin and shame and all of how that functions.
Yeah. So I, coming out of kind of a faith background for me that was very kind of shame focused,
Mm,
strongly evangelical slash fundamentalist perspectives that was very, very shame focused and,
mhm,
purity culture and the whole thing that,
mhm,
kind of went along with that, there's a lot that I'm still sort of deprogramming myself from.
mm,
Um, in a lot of that. And that was so when I first engaged Brene Brown's stuff, years ago, sort of when she kind of blew into the mainstream, that was like a revelatory thing for me. Um,
mhm,
and the power of shame and beginning to see it, because at that time I don't think I recognized it as being something that was tied in with my faith.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and then beginning to start to see the ways in which aspects of my faith had reinforced that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and life experiences beyond the church as well. But um, there was a quote that I put in our notes. Brian Stevenson, the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative, right? Yeah, I think
I think
that's
that's
the
what
yeah.
it's called. Yeah.
But one of his most famous quotes is that each of us is more than the worst thing that we've ever done,
Yeah.
and how many of us just hold on to that thing that's the worst thing about us
Mhm,
and think that
mhm.
that's what everybody else would see too.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah, you
and
really
so
see that with Genu, right? This as far as we're shown about his story, I mean, there's that one moment where he kind of abandons his family, and that is the thing. That is such a core brokenness in his life that he is willing to have what I read it as is all of his memories kind of wiped. Not just that one, but maybe it was. But like it's such a profound rupture in his own self-image that he just wants to forget it, which is also a very like we see the ways that the maladaptive ways that we try to deal with shame in our culture, which is numb it, anesthetize it, like forget it, make other people feel bad, and we ought to back up and say, like, and Brene in her work talks about the difference between guilt and shame. And guilt is I made a mistake, and shame is I am a mistake. Like I am bad, like all the way down. And I mean, you and I like are, like strict Calvinist theology, the doctrine of total depravity, that's like right in there. And I think a lot of us more modern Presbyterians and Reformed Christians kind of hold that doctrine maybe lightly, to say the least, or at least offer some critiques of it, right? Because I think where it can take us is this like, we are so just bad down to the core, and we cannot, uh, there's nothing we can do about that. Jesus does all that work for us, which, I get that. And also the implications of that, I think, can be problematic for people's mental and emotional health to just be like, I'm a worm, and we have that in our history. So,
mhm, mhm.
um,
Yeah,
so yeah,
yeah, and
shame is just a real thread in this.
yeah, yeah, and it was a revelatory thing for me some years ago. I don't know exactly when, and I'm trying to remember if it was Richard Rohr or something, but someone kind of in that camp just brought up the fact of in the creation story, um, you know, mythological parable, poetic, however you read it, the first part is that everything it's good, 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 good. It's very good. It's like wow,
Mm, mhm.
and
Yeah,
that we can get onto that place of okay, there is the tree and the apple and Eve and Adam and blah blah, da 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 da. But that's not the first part. The first
yeah,
part is God did all this and said, "Wow, this is
yeah,
great," and that's still there with us.
yeah, yeah.
And so that was again one of those things that like you read it and you go, "Oh, duh," but
Mm,
so much of what I had kind of been programmed with was this, the, you're a worm, you are
mhm,
horrible, you are awful, you can't let people show, you can't show who you are. Um,
mhm.
and one thing I noticed just of the moment and Marianne was kind of Rumi's um kind of mentor, kind of whatever. Was that
Celine,
Celine? Celine.
yeah,
That's there's a scene where basically Rumi is like kind of revealing herself. Like she's like, I'm
mhm,
going, this is, who I am. And
yeah.
Celine is in front of a tree. And I thought about
Oh,
like how
hmm,
intent, granted,
yes,
everything in a film like this is intentional,
yes,
but
sure.
like reading into it of like that Celine's still in the garden
Yeah,
and still
wow.
hide it, hide it,
Mhm,
don't let it out.
yeah,
No one's gonna, and it's her leaving the garden that,
yes,
Rumi
wow.
does that. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, so that just reminded me of one of my kind of teachers in my evolution beyond this kind of original sin as just our fundamental brokenness, right? Is Harold Kushner, not, um, yeah, I think that's the one I'm thinking of, who wrote When Bad Things Happen to Good People. But he also wrote a book about this Adam and Eve story. I mean, he's coming from the Jewish perspective. And I think that one's called How Good Do We Have to Be? And he talks about that moment of taking the fruit off of that tree, not as paradise lost, but paradise outgrown. Like I mean, the knowledge of good and evil, I mean, isn't that a good thing to have that knowledge, right? We can't know it perfectly. Only God kind of is able to adjudicate all that well, but like we aren't meant to stay in that garden. And I didn't even notice she was under a tree. That's such a great sort of pull there. Um, and that is, I think, the moment when they have that confrontation, Rumi and Celine near the end, um, Celine or Rumi says, "If this is the Hanmoon I'm supposed to protect, I'm glad to see it destroyed." So that is kind of her like, I don't want to be in this garden. I don't accept your rules anymore. These don't work. You're making me deny part of who I am. And I mean, that's an interesting mapping onto that Genesis 2 and 3, right? Where we take that and we can't live in that garden anymore. And then it leads to all kinds of difficult things, right? I mean, then you have Cain and Abel, and I mean, it's not like it was all rosy once we left that garden, to say the least, but it was inevitable, I guess. There's an inevitability to taking that fruit and taking that step.
Yeah, and a great comment. Don Meeks, one of Marianne's colleagues in the National Capital Presbytery, um, and also formerly pastor of one of my churches, kind of past history is,
You
he shared.
kidding?
No, no, no. First Pres Boulder.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Original blessing and goodness is necessary so as to understand what we have fallen from and what we are
Yeah.
called back to in restoration. And
There you
C.S.
go.
Lewis plays with the tree imagery in Magician's Nephew. Yes, indeed. Yes,
Nice.
indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Love it, Don, and welcome.
Yeah,
So glad you're here with us.
yeah.
Yeah, so shame will probably continue to weave throughout our conversation, but what else are you thinking about as
I
you reflect?
I was sad in the conversations um with the Demon Hunters with Mira, Rumi, and Zoe, of the celebration of the suffer like the destruction and the suffering. Like,
Mhm.
and yes, their job is they have to defeat the demons to protect. Okay, yes,
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah.
But was just sort of there was a moment fairly early on where it was like, yeah, let's go destroy those demons.
Yeah.
Um and I again, this some of my own baggage in history. I remember kind of like the Frank Peretti, like This Present Darkness books and things like that that
Mm.
portrayed the world that we're in as like this cosmic battle, and
Yeah.
that and almost this sense of like when you vanquish the evil, it is
Yeah.
this like celebratory thing. And that in there kind of made me sad of like, yeah, but what if they could be changed? What if there could
Mhm.
be transformation? What if there
Yeah.
could be, and not just simply again the act of violence and destruction to destroy,
Yeah.
um, as opposed to something of restoration or
Yeah.
renewal or transformation.
Mm. Right.
Um, yeah, and again,
Yeah.
so in the Jesus stories again, so which Mary and I are both rooted in, um, there's even with like the stories of demon possession and things of that sort,
Mhm.
there's a desire for restoration. It's not just, oh, this person's
Mhm.
possessed, kill him. It
Yeah.
was like, how do we transform them?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry I cut you off there,
Yeah.
Marianne.
Oh, no, 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 no. I think, I mean, I saw that too and was like, "Oh gosh, feels a little, um, binary focused," right? Of like, they're bad. We don't see them as broken. We don't see them as, in need of liberation. They just need to be destroyed, right? And even near the end, I mean, anyway, let me finish that thought. Like that to me is the arc of the movie, right? They're taught by Celine, hide your flaws, hide your brokenness, just put on this kind of facade of strength, any kind of, things you don't like about yourself, you just suppress those. And so that clearly that is maladaptive. That is not a liberating way to be, just to have to pretend. And so it feels like they're all kind of on that journey. Um, and that's kind of what they come to realize as they, again, Rumi saying this honeymoon, the way that it's been envisioned, it doesn't work because we're having to suppress part of ourselves to to do that. But yeah, there's still some of that, vanquish the bad guys. And 2 days from now, it's Christ the King Sunday. I've always loved that some of that theology of the cosmic battle between good and evil. Like I like that bit of how we understand Jesus' work in the world is like the powers of sin and death have been defeated definitively. Um, and yet you're right. That also takes us to a place where we can um, really see things in a very binary way, good and bad. And now we're in a culture where we are so polarized that maybe that theology, which for those of us who are theology nerds, that's Christus Victor, like Christ has been victorious over the powers and principalities. I resonate a lot with that. And I think a lot of our best stories that you and I love so much, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, all of these, like that's the battle. Like there's the ultimate victory at the end. And yet maybe it's outlived its usefulness a little bit, given how deeply entrenched we seem to be in our camps.
Mhm.
So just a little bit of a kind of a side note there.
Oh,
Um,
but in Star Wars, at least in the original trilogy, Luke didn't. It was everybody else said destroy Vader, destroy Vader. Luke was
yeah.
like, no, there's
Mhm.
good in him. I can feel it,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and he still had that hope that was going to be
Mhm.
there.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's a great. Yeah. So even in those kind of battles, what we like to see is I mean, we love a redemption arc, right? And so that's part of what we see here. We see it with Genu also, who makes the sacrifice play. It reminded me, I wondered if when you were watching that, when he kind of sacrifices himself for Rumi, I was thinking about Scourge from Thor Ragnarok because,
Yeah.
like, um, which is just, I mean, this is Carl Urban playing this, character who kind of was the henchman for the big bad, Hela, who's the bad villain in that. And then he, like, just right at the end, he makes the sacrifice play and redeems himself in a lot of ways, saves a bunch of people. Anyway, for those who
Mm-hmm.
needed, there's your MCU.
There we go.
So anyway, um, so let's while we're talking about the demons, there were so much intentionality in the way these issues were framed in this movie. So you do have they're not, I think demons, you think about wrestling with our demons. I thought about this movie in light of 12-step work, um, the kind of, the dark night of the soul, the idea that we're kind of confronting our demons. Of course, there's scriptural stories about people possessed by demons, and we have to hold those in a kind of responsible way and with our modern kind of awareness of mental health and such. But I just found that really kind of, they're not, whatever. They could have given them some other name, but demons has such a deep spiritual kind of resonance. And with other things too, I was thinking about even the use of the word patterns. The markings that people have on the demons or the demon possessed, whatever the terminology is, on their bodies. They're not stripes, they're not marks, they're patterns, which led me to think of the patterns of thinking, the ways our brains kind of get focused in a certain, like, this is the way I understand myself. Um, and and I just loved in the way that they use that word, because I think it's, that shame-based thinking, that spiral that we get into, that's a pattern. The pattern needs to be disrupted. It's not like the marks need to be removed. It's not like the stripes need to be covered up. The patterns need to be disrupted. The patterns, which I think that's about healing, right? Rather than just putting them down. So,
Mhm.
to your point about just destroying the demons, no, let's disrupt this narrative.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Mhm.
thoughts about
Well
any of that?
yeah, this just popped into my mind as we were talking, um, which is, there's also it was I th their work, Mira, Rumi, and Zoe's work was about protecting community and protecting not just them as individuals, but, there's also that whole thing about the communal shame, the communal, which
Yeah.
this didn't really get into, but when you talk about patterns, there's that reality of, like, the systems that we
Mhm.
all live within, our individual family systems, the church systems that we're each a part of, um, the national system that we're a part of, and the ways in which we do these same things in community where there's a shameful event or a shameful part of our history that, you know, people in the church, oh yeah, Pastor Jones from back in the day. We're not going to talk about what happened with Pastor Jones. We're just going to
Yeah.
move along, even though that's still there.
Mhm.
We're not going to talk about the realities of history within our country, um, because that goes against a sense that we're great and we're perfect, or,
Mhm.
in our own family histories. We're not going to talk about our, uncle who, yeah, you remember what Uncle Bill did, those kinds of
Mhm.
things. So, yeah, so there, which is when you brought up patterns, that was in there,
Yeah. Ooh,
for
good to
me. And
see you.
yay,
Yay.
yay.
You wanna read the comment
Sure,
that he put
sure.
in?
Yeah. So Fu shared, who was on one of these with us a couple months back. This is a wonderful view of human nature. Patterns help us to make sense of the world. When our patterns no longer serve us to grow, then they need to be disrupted so we can continue to flourish.
So well said. So well
Yeah,
said.
into that.
And one of the patterns that I saw in the dynamic of the trio is right at the beginning of the movie, when they've finished their little concert and they're like gonna relax and just have some time off. And then there's this moment where Rumi like drops the song Golden, and we've already established that her voice is needs rest or there's something going on with her voice. And it was such a weird choice that she made. I remember at the time I was like, why'd she do that? Um, and seeing it a second time, I kind of got her character more because I was able to see the whole arc. But um, it's established that they are, we could call them workaholics, or we could just say they're really, really dedicated to their work. They're dedicated to their fans. And I really loved how much they loved their fans. Like they really cared about their fans. It wasn't, they really had hearts of gold. They weren't just in it for the money or the socials or whatever. Um, but again, this goes back to the shame thing. Like, she's having this problem, and her solution is to double down and work harder, right? To put that song out there, which basically forces them back in, off breaks over. And it reminded me again to evoke Brene Brown. She talks about hustling for worthiness, like hustling for, hey, Scout, I see you shifting positions on the couch. um, yeah, I don't have any cats with me, but sometimes they're sitting over there. When we feel this shame flare up, like she did maybe in her voice, or she was like, oh no, what am I going to do? We double down and work harder. Like we've got to put effort into whatever has been not working. If we just work harder at it, that'll get us there. I think it's Gabor Mate talks about addictions as the things in our lives that almost work, like the compulsive work or the shopping or the porn addiction or whatever it is. It's like it just almost gets us what we need, so we keep at it. And for her, that was how I kind of saw that choice. And I just got that a little more on second reading or second watching. That it's like, I don't know how to heal this, so I'm just going to work even harder. And that felt very real. I could really relate to that.
I think you wrote about that this morning a little bit.
Did I?
You did. You did. Well, I mean, just
Remind me.
you were talking about the different ways that science has talked about how you
Power.
define power.
Yeah.
And one of them is basically the just keep forcing it.
Yeah.
And I heard in the family I married into, one of the regular phrases is BF and E, brute force and ignorance, or BF and I. Um, and that's just sort of a little bit of the family that I
Yeah.
married into. Um, that there's just sort of this sense of like, just keep pushing harder and keep pushing
Yeah.
harder. And just,
Yeah.
if you hit it hard enough, it'll finally break, you know?
Hmm.
Um,
Yes.
so that, her, Rumi's feel was, I'm just going to keep pushing this, even though her voice was, for whatever reason, it wasn't clear
Hmm.
at that moment. Um, her voice was needing something
Yeah.
needed, and
Yeah.
wasn't just going to go see the unique doctor. Uh, you
Which,
know,
by the way, did we need to talk about his name, because his name is Han. Well, we could go into Han Solo, but I'm thinking about Korean Han, and I am speaking about a culture not my own, and so I want to be careful about that. But my understanding of the concept of Han, now Han is a common Korean name. It's so they might have, but I don't think it was an accident that they picked the. Do you know the concept of Han, which
I've
is
heard
kind
it,
of
but I'm
a
not remembering it right
sort
now.
of
Go.
this distinctive Korean inflected kind of grief and sorrow that uh, comes from a result of the long sad history of the Korean nation.
And
And I
Fu
was,
just
yeah,
said Han unjustified woundedness.
thank you, man. Can we just add? I don't know if there's a way to add him after midstream, but yeah, exactly. So um, now I was reading about this before we got on, and there's some interesting generational inflections where I think younger Koreans are kind of like, this is more of a kind of a boomer and older thing, and we don't necessarily claim this as part of doesn't resonate in the way that it once did. Again, I'm speaking about a culture not my own, so I'm talking about what I've sort of discovered, but I think it's interesting. And you had noted this character who, by the way, is played by Daniel Day Kim, who
Off.
was Jin in Lost, and Celine is played by Jin Young Kim, who was Sun in Lost. So I just love that
Yay.
they are both in this show. But you name checked him and some of his approach, which he kind of comes off a little bit like a charlatan, but he drops some pearls of wisdom. I don't know if you want to talk about some of
You
those.
you go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, what was it? To treat the part, you must treat the whole, I think was what you wrote down about him, and he keeps saying that. Um, you know, and my read on that was, especially the second time, because you had written this, and I went back and heard him say that. He gives them like the fake, what is the stuff called they were supposed to drink? The,
I don't remember what it was called, but it was grape juice.
yeah, it was grape
Once you
juice.
tell the label off.
And so and then it's like, oh, well, this guy's just a huckster. But is he really? He nailed what needed to be, he said what needed to be said, which is you cannot heal your voice. This is a whole body, this is a whole psyche healing that needs to take place. Um, and it's true not just of her, but like the three of them, how they interact and understand each other. So in some way, it was like a creative placebo effect, I think, of the grape juice. It wasn't fraudulent. It's not about what you drink. I mean, if you believe that the drink makes you better, it makes you better. But really, what you need to do is tend to all this broader stuff. So, anything you want to add to that? I'm so glad you name checked that.
Yeah. And
That
by the way,
piece.
yes, thank you for bringing up the lost part. So dear to my heart.
Lost.
Um,
Same.
so and their story is so good in that show. Anyway,
Ugh.
so yeah, I so just of a personal story, I was at a thing in 2013 that was massively transformative for my life. And I went to it though in the middle of like massive depression, all kinds of stuff. And I was meeting with one of their spiritual directors. And I was really kind of had this idea of like, okay, what's the one thing that's going to do this? What's going to get me turned around? And the way she put it, she said, your soul is starving. That was her language. And she's like, there isn't just one thing that's going to feed it.
Yeah.
And I was
Wow.
just like, "Ah," you know,
Mm.
um,
Oh, that's a
and
ugh.
so such a gift. And
Yeah.
um, so yeah, it's and even that, I'm uh, at in about an hour and 15 minutes, I'm going to a rehab session because I did something to my shoulder. And one of the things that the PT person has kept telling me is, we are teaching you how to we're reteaching you how to use your arm.
Mm.
I'm like, the first thought was like, I know how to use my arm. It's just fine.
Yeah.
No, no, you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And it's amazing I mean, when I have had PT also or injured myself, when they teach you how to foam roll, for example, when you're a runner, they're like, roll your calves or whatever. If you've got an injured part, they they work other areas. So like, okay, your ankle is messed up, but they're going to really work on your knee and your hip, because they all, I mean, again, that's self-evident, but every time I'm reminded of that, I need to be reminded of it, that everything impacts everything else.
yeah,
And these three are not going to be healed so long as Rumi's not. They're a body, a community together, and I think that really comes through in this show. Now, something else just came to me while you were talking about. I don't know. Maybe it was. Oh yeah, the workaholic stuff. So Ed and I were at a conference together last week. He needed to leave early, and so wasn't part of this long-term workshop that we did multiple sessions of a workshop together. And we were teaching people this tool on how to evaluate your ministry. And about midway through, we kind of just did a check and we had people journal like, what does this require of your leadership? Like what will you need to do in order to use this approach? And I had an aha for myself that I shared with the group, which is when you're learning, I'm sure you've had this experience, Ed, like you're learning something and it's like, oh man, this is going to take a lot. You like to really incorporate this way of thinking, and you sort of start to feel lower and lower, like this is a bird, And and I was like, what if this is not a burden, or how can what we're teaching you help set you free? I guess was kind of what I gave to the people because that was something I needed to hear too. When we learn things, sometimes we feel oppressed by, like we've got to do this right, and we have this big heavy thing we now need to carry. But it's what if we can think about it as a tool for our own freedom and our own liberation, rather than this thing we need to follow like a kind of prescription. And I think that's the work that the trio, and especially Rumi, has to do, to say it's not about pushing harder. It's about letting up on the accelerator, and trusting that the healing can come through you, and it's not something you have to do. Which again goes back to original sin and trying to hustle to be worthy. So anyway,
Hmm. Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
so what else do you want to talk
So
up? Anything
I
else?
had,
Yeah.
I had two kind of quick hitters. One of them is kind of for my colleague here who wrote this amazing book about hope. Um, there was this line where, and I think this was when uh, Genu and Rumi were talking on the roof,
Mm-hmm.
and said, "That's the thing about hope. No one gets to decide when you feel it."
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
and it's sort of a jump away from some of what we've talked about. It was a different kind of context, but like, just in so many things, it's like these things of like, why can't you see this? Why can't you feel this? Why can't?
Mm,
Because
mm,
I'm not there yet. I am not in that place. And that, I was talking with someone a couple days ago about grief, and that, she's 2 years past her husband dying,
mm,
and she said it's the second year has been so much harder,
mm,
and that this situation, like, there are other people who'd been saying, that, "Oh, yeah, you should be go that you should be over this, you should be," and again, there's shame. She says, "I'm saying that. There's shame right there," which then gets internalized of, "Yeah, I should be. I should be. I should be." But I love that line though of that's the thing about hope. No one gets to decide when you feel it.
yeah.
I just, yeah.
I love that. Well, and it makes me think of these songs that they are trying to put in the world that are going to seal the Hanmoon once and for all. And I'm sure I'm not the first one to say this, but this is just, I hadn't thought about this before. They know, like, they sense that Takedown isn't going to do it because it's not fundamentally a liberating song. It's not an inclusive song. It's a takedown. It's catchy as heck, but it's not going to like bring the kind of golden the sort of strands throughout the world. It's kind of fundamentally mean spirited, and like you said at the beginning about like take the demons down, which was so, discomforting for you, and I agree. But Golden doesn't do it either. Golden is the other. So Takedown is like indulging our worst impulses, and Golden is we're golden, and it's very kind of flattening of the the shadow side of ourselves, of all of us. But the one that does it is this is what it sounds like, which is the song that's about we're going to be real. This is who we really are. And so the alternative to what you're describing, which is you should feel hopeful, grief lasts 1 year, it's very pretty and pat and kind of, prescribed. No, life's complicated. And so let's just be authentic with each other and ourselves. And that's the
Mhm.
way forward, which I found to be a really good message.
Well, and I pulled
Um,
up the lyrics earlier
yeah.
for that song. This is what it sounds like. And I mean, it is just profound,
Yeah.
of I broke into a million pieces and I can't go back. but now I'm seeing all the beauty in the broken glass. The scars are a part of me, darkness and harmony. My voice without the lies. This is what it sounds like. Why did I cover up the color stuck inside my head? I should have let the jagged edges meet the light instead. Show me what's underneath. I'll find your harmony. The song we couldn't write. This is what it sounds like. Um, and later, so we're not heroes. We're still survivors. The dreamers, the
I loved
fighters.
that
No
line.
lying. I'm tired,
Yeah,
but dive in the fire, and I'll be right here by your side. Um, like,
so good.
yeah, just
And
so
yeah.
good.
And again, with the kind of, conference experience of, like, don't use these tools as a burden, let them set you free. We saw them, struggling with the takedown song, like, they're crossing out lines, and they're like, Let me use this book instead." They're trying so hard, and, you know, I love musicals, and it always you have to kinda suspend disbelief because it's like, all of a sudden, they're all singing this song together, like, you didn't see them writing the song.
Yeah.
And I love that in this context because it's like this didn't come from them, it's coming through them, these words. And that's really powerful just to let it happen through you rather than again pushing and trying to, you know, um, affect it yourself. This goes back to original sin and or
Mhm.
original blessing, right? Like we can't save ourselves, but we have this gift of grace and freedom that comes that we, in our tradition, see as the gospel and as Jesus' work in our lives. Um, and I don't did you notice, I didn't notice this the first time, but, when, is it Gima, like, he steals souls, and it's kind of this silvery thing that he sort of extracts from people, and he eats their souls or whatever. And in that song, this is what it sounds like. People are giving their souls to the trio, to Huntrix, like that there's this silver-like swirl that comes around them, and so it's this beautiful offering, not that saps them of their souls, but it encircles the heroes or the survivors, I guess. And that's a really beautiful you've seen that, I've seen that as pastors, the healing that comes when people embrace one another and, say, "I'm here." That support from the fans, so,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
The
loved
only
it.
other thing I had was, and again, this is acknowledging this is a different cultural context than what I grew up in, and so I'm hearing this as we in my context, the names of the trio, Mira,
Yeah.
Rumi, and Zoe, and so I would
Zoe's
be
close to
curious.
your heart.
Zoe is close to my heart, although my daughter Zoe would say it was misspelled.
Yeah.
She's a Zoe, not a Zoey. Um, but I hear those I hear, like in Mira, I hear the Spanish of sight, like seeing.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
with Zoe, I hear the Greek, the abundant life that
Mhm.
that is there. And I
And
saw
she's
that
so
in her.
bubbly.
She is,
Yeah,
absolutely. And
yeah.
with Mira, there was also she was sort of like the blunt, I'm gonna
Mhm.
just put up the mirror.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
boom, here it
such a
is.
great yeah,
And
love that.
Rumi, I thought, the poet, the
Mhm.
spiritual, guru.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
I was just curious of like what, and maybe in like the original Korean, like what were their names? What was that? Was
Mhm.
that changed for the American version or the English
Right.
version?
Oh, that's a
Um,
yeah, good
but I just
question.
yeah, but when I heard the names, I was like, "Hmm," because again,
Yeah,
nothing's accidental with this. They're not like, "Oh, let's just
right.
make it Mira. Let's just" there's
Yeah, pick
purpose
something
behind
that
it.
sounds good, right? That's
Yeah.
such a great question, and, um yeah, you sent and I included on the show notes a link to, like, various Easter eggs and references to Korean culture, and their weapons are very authentic to traditional Korean weapons and that sort of thing, but also um, that they talked about the shamans, shamans in I think it's called Gut, in Korean culture, but that they're often women. So that's cool. I did not realize that. So there's so yeah, I love you're ruminating, pun intended, on their
Ruminating.
names. The other one, and this is totally frivolous as we kind of start to land the plane, but my husband and I love Korean spas. I don't know if they have any in Cincinnati or if that's a thing that you've done, but all of their bathhouse kind of the scenes, I was like, oh, I gotta go. We have a few in our area, and they're really wonderful. But the one we go to most often, the uh, the logo, it's King Spa, and there are several locations around the country, but it's a lion's head. So the Saja Boys, that was their logo, and I'm like, I think there's probably some symbolism there that may have maybe at play that I'm not aware of, but anyway,
There's actually I looked up a couple things on that of like, what's the meaning, and
yeah,
it's we a whole lot we don't have time for. So if
yeah,
you just
yeah,
do a
well,
search, you'll find what does Saja
right,
Boys mean.
yeah,
There's some interesting double meanings from
yes,
things with Korean in there. So in
yeah,
Korean culture. So yeah,
all
good
right.
stuff.
Yeah, great. Well, we're right at the hour. Sorry we started late again. Blame Substack, but also give Substack thanks because otherwise this is how we're getting together for these, and we're gonna get together next week, right?
Yes.
So
Charlie Brown. Yeah, we are
Charlie Brown
next
Thanksgiving.
Wednesday. We are doing Charlie Brown Thanksgiving. So
That's right.
get your
We'll include the
pretzels,
link.
your jelly beans, your popcorn.
Your popcorn, your toast.
Yeah.
But we're not going to make Franklin sit all by himself on that side of the table. We will.
You've noticed that too.
Someone brought it up. But it's been discussed in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
internet world.
Mhm.
But yeah. So thanks all for joining us. We'll include a link to next week's in the show notes, and yeah, go listen to some K-pop today
It's
and
catchy.
feel good.
The soundtrack
Yeah.
is so good. It's so
It's really
catchy.
great, really
Yeah.
great. So, all right.
All
Thank
right.
you all, and we'll see you next time.
See you, friends. Bye bye.
Bye.